A friend of mine is in the dating scene currently, and as he's shared his experiences with me over the course of the last year or two, I've noticed at least one thing. And that is, whenever the people that he meets ask him for something, he's usually very quick to just keel over and give them whatever they want and be as accommodating as he possibly can. So, if, for example, somebody, say, changes the plans that he had set for them on a date, then he just goes along with it. Even in another way, if somebody asks for reassurance by expressing an insecurity to him, then he just gives them a free pass. One time, for example, somebody said, I'm seeing a therapist right now. What do you think about that? Or, I'm not very good at making conversation over the phone. And in all those cases, he just says, oh yeah, don't even worry about it. That's totally okay. You got nothing to worry about, and I'm completely fine with that. In other words, in my opinion, he was being too nice in those situations. And that's just one example of many different scenarios in which I've observed people being too nice and going out of their way to accommodate other people. And I myself am guilty of having done that. So in this video, I want to take a look at the origin of that, the motivation behind it, so we can better understand it, why that's a problem, what it really says about you, and what the solution is, how to really be assertive. So the motivation behind this is really quite simple, and that is, we just want people to like us and to respond positively to us. And at the same time, we're afraid that if we assert ourselves, we might upset them and then they won't like us anymore. So we think that by being really nice to people, we're going to achieve that effect, because who doesn't like somebody who's just always nice to them, right? And nobody likes someone who's mean. But as soon as you start to look at it from their perspective, it starts to become clear that that's not at all how you're being perceived. You're actually doing a lot more harm than good in more ways than you would imagine. In particular, it shows that you're a very fearful person and you lack a lot of confidence, which has its own subset of implications in general. For one, it suggests that you probably weren't very positively received by many people in your life previously, and people will assume that there's probably a very bad reason for that. It also suggests that you're not capable of protecting those around you, because you're more than likely going to back down whenever you perceive a threat. And you also have to take note of what you're saying about the other person. If you're afraid of somebody, then you're saying they're the type of person that you should be afraid of. In other words, there's some kind of monster or some kind of criminal. I actually once was friends with somebody who was excessively apologetic, thinking that was going to please me, but it just kind of ended up offending me, because they were implying that I was just going to blow up in a murderous rage at even the first sign of the slightest misstep. Second of all, if you are too nice, then your niceness has no value, because it's being given and not earned. In general, the more abundant something is, the easier it is to come by, and therefore the less value it has. And contrary to what you might think, people aren't going to like you for giving them free stuff. Instead, they might even feel the opposite and say, well, that was rather anticlimactic and boring, and I wish that as an alternative, you would challenge me. And third, it shows that you care way too much about what the other person thinks, which means they in turn have to be very careful and watch everything that they say and do, because they don't know how it's going to affect you. And that's just stressful and uncomfortable and anxiety-inducing, and people aren't going to be able to relax around you or enjoy themselves around you. So to fix that, there are a few things you can do to be just a little bit more assertive. The first of which is to evaluate before you accommodate. You're just making people jump through a hoop or two before you give it away for free, which means in turn it has more value, and you've now asserted more control and power in that situation. So if somebody says, for example, something like what I said in the beginning, hey, I'm not very good at talking over the phone, is that okay? Then before you just immediately approve of that, you can ask about it. You can say, well, what do you mean by that? Because that's not really a skill. And then they'll justify it, and you think about it for a second, and then you can approve about it and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not that big of a deal. And so instead of giving it away for free, like I said, you've made them work for it, and you chose to give it to them. Number two, don't be afraid to stand up for your needs just because they conflict with somebody else's, because you're just going to get walked on if you don't. And you don't even have to be obnoxious about it. So for example, I was once out to lunch with a friend, and it wasn't even 30 seconds of us waiting that she started trying to goad me into accosting the hostess to seat us sooner. And I knew it wasn't going to accomplish anything, so I said, I'm sorry you feel that way, but no, I'm not going to do that. We're going to be patient and wait just like everybody else. And that's what we ended up doing. Number three, assertiveness does come across with your body language and demeanor just as much as with what you say. And so while it is okay to smile and laugh and joke around with people, eventually you do want to draw the line and keep a straight face and just relax and stop fidgeting around. Because if you don't do that and you just lay it on too thick, then it's apparent that you're intentionally just keeping the mood light because you're too afraid to deal with any level of seriousness. And lastly, don't worry too much about how other people feel. So of course, do your due diligence, be polite and respectful, but maintain that if after that point people still want to be offended, then it's out of your hands and there's nothing you can do about it. And as soon as you adopt that as a mindset, then it'll reflect with your actions and you will start to come across as more assertive. So with that, I hope that helps. Let me know where you think you fall on the spectrum of being very accommodating versus just being not accommodating at all and just rude and disrespectful, and where you think being assertive falls on that scale. And I'd love to hear from you. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.